And it's like, it's very much like a little PC. We have there really is no more embedded Linux for all intents and purposes. We use the same kernel as the PCs do, and in this case an older version, but it's really like a different distribution of Linux. So I think the other thing is to understand that, and I'll get into this a little further, but the other reason that programming for electronics is becoming so compelling is because you can now. It used to be some years ago that this was really a matter of low-level hacking, and if you knew assembly language and C code and hardware, then you had an opportunity. But today, a lot of our goal is to make programming for these devices as easy as programming a web page. You'll see we're putting browser and literally allowing HTML interface to this stuff. So this is our current product, a little bit of a kind of an embedded media center, so to speak. And again, rather than get into all the gory details of this, I'm happy to answer questions after, back at the table. And what, our view as far as the set-top box, and they call it the embedded media center, is that, the old conventional view was that all these devices are going to be consolidated into one, and it's going to look like a PC sitting next to your TV set. And we took a step back and we said, well, wait, what are the things that we, what are really the benefits of each side of this, Yeah, the PC's open, it's a general purpose machine, expandable, connected, fully networked. But on the other hand, all the embedded devices always have an advantage. They're always cheaper. They're, quieter. The power consumption is, is way down, and these measured in watts versus the big, fan-powered power supply of the PC. It's got all the multimedia built in and the correct I/O, so it comes with a remote. There's no, there's no retrofitting to try and make a PC into a multimedia machine, but it all comes, set up and ready to go. And so that to us drew the conclusion that, hey, to get the best of both worlds, the best way to do it is actually to take, electronics or embedded device and open it up. Rather than trying to make a PC fit into a piece of electronics, why not take the big benefits of being open and, and use that as the driver of convergence. And the reality is that convergence isn't just all devices coming together. I mean, we had that 50 years ago with the Victrola that everyone huddled around. I mean, the reality is that convergence nowadays is more like a lava lamp. New functions spin off from, old ones, new functions come together. So, again, that's why we think that the embedded space is so well positioned to take on that convergence. So Neuros, and where are we headed, and what's our approach to this? And this slide's a little bit overwhelming, but the point of this is that, we're not just an open source company, but we're an open company. And so what that means is that, as some of you know have followed along with us, we release products very early to developers as kind of developer kits, which allows all kinds of experimentation and so on and so forth, and allows us to get, market feedback and developer feedback, and, it's kind of a release early and often type of philosophy for hardware. That starts with this little piece, a little hardware module. So, this is used for, academia, people want to experiment, industrial folks where, low power and size is really a key driver. And we're essentially, approaching this today. We're going to be launching this as a developer kit in about a month. And you'll see on that scrap of paper there's information on getting notified for when samples and so on and so forth are going to be available. And that's on the piece of paper that goes with the shot glass. But in about a month, we'll be selling this with this carrier board, which we made to fit in a mini ITX form factor. So, again, taking it to the next level of hackability, this is actually going to be sold with a little housing like this, so that this goes in here, and then, you want it with internal storage, or your 3.5-inch hard drive, you want it with an optical drive, or you want to play with different hardware and peripherals, then, mechanically you're empowered to do that. So this is going to be the setup that's going to go on sale in about a month. You get the board and you get the housing. And, the software at that point will be quite rudimentary. It's really still a developer kit. But we're hoping that this will get to a kind of a retail product around Q4. So, an early adopter kind of stage, that the software will get developed to the point where this will be in its custom housing, and this will be, you know, the next generation of our consumer product sometime around the end of the year. You know, our vision for this is that it's an open, beyond just being open source, it's an open platform for set-top box. And again, you know, one of my real sources of passion is that, you know, where do we get our content from? Is it going to be determined by, you know, the cable and satellite operators or some central gatekeeper, or is this going to connect to the open internet and draw content from any source that you want? Well, the reality is that there's already quite a bit of content I don't have to tell you guys, you know, and so making this open so that it, you know, adapts to that, making it very easy for developers to put new content to it, you know, is going to create a platform that allows access, you know, for anyone to hopefully everyone's TV set. That's the real vision for this. So we're going to be spending a lot of the next 6 to 18 months recruiting third parties and trying to get new applications, interesting multimedia stuff, as well as get content providers to start porting. There's a lot of complaints, and I was talking at Lug Radio Live in Wolverhampton that one of the BBC representatives were there, and BBC has put up a lot of content, but it was a Windows-only program at the time. They've since expanded it, but attracting content like that so that there's third parties going, you know, freely to any TV set with an open platform that can be used by a variety of manufacturers. For those of you who are interested, again, there's multiple ways to participate in this. So, you know, again, the point of this is really breaking that, you know, don't think of some embedded device as this, you know, highly geeky technical thing that, you know, is all about, you know, low-level hardware hacking. Yeah, there's some of that. We certainly need a lot of, and you'll see the bounties, a lot of which are sponsored by TI. Yeah, there's a lot of driver work, and there's a lot of, I mean, this is still very much the frontier land. Things that you'd expect, you know, that are very mature on a PC are still very much emerging. So, you know, so definitely there's some work to be done on the kernel and drivers and supporting the hardware. But, you know, what I think is new and really evolving is that, you know, there's a lot of high-level stuff, too. I mean, this, you know, the Trolltech toolkit, you know, obviously very familiar for, you know, a lot of the desktop developers, you know, very similar. And even beyond that, you know, the web browser is going to mean that, you know, literally you can program in HTML for some of the interfaces for this. So, you know, allowing access at a variety of levels is really kind of a key precept of this. And, you know, this stuff has to be, you know, the interesting stuff happens with the user interface and modifying this so that, you know, your experience on the TV set isn't a keyboard and mouse, but it's a remote control, and how do you browse properly with this tree structure. But, you know, but again, those are usability features, those are ease of use things, those are stuff that everyone can participate in. And then it really gets interesting when you start to think about, you know, the sharing of media, and, you know, you don't have to worry about the low-level stuff to think about, you know, how is content going to arrive to TV sets when there's, you know, infinite variety of content that's not tethered to a time or something, you know. Used to be the channel up-down browsing, and then, you know, and then the DVRs brought all content, you know, in a now playing kind of variety. Well, what's it going to be like when the whole world's content is open up? Are you going to have an inbox on your set that came from, you know, friends and family? What are these browsing, you know, models going to look like? And that's where, you know, the easier we make it to program, the more of that experimentation we're going to get, as well as the more and more content. So that's really, you know, largely the vision here. You know, again, multiple different ways to integrate. We're going to provide a framework that makes it very easy to, you know, have that usability on the TV set, but it won't be limited to that. Like I said, you know, that's a module that may be used for industrial applications and plugged into batteries and, you know, looking at underwater, you know, cameras and stuff, and we've had some experience with that from some of our previous models. So, variety of different ways to participate in that. From a hardware perspective, I know some of you who followed are very interested in this stuff. So the current unit is a standard definition unit, both from its display resolutions as well as the I/O. The second generation is moving into at least 720p recording. At some levels, there's, you know, the TI system is actually all the codecs are software driven, so it really depends on the quality of your codecs, what the outputs of this, and, you know, there's certain codec providers who potentially can do can do 1080i in MPEG-2, meaning that you have a full over-the-air PVR with our second generation hardware. But either way, it continues to enhance, and we'll get close to the specs as we start to roll out these. But you see Wi-Fi's optional on this, actually not just as a bridge, but actually as an internal accessory. Hard drive is included as it was not in the previous generation. Some of the I/O, you'll see HDMI out, component for recording. How many, I guess I should take a step back. I'm assuming that all you're familiar with the OSD. How many in here are actually familiar with the product lines that we've, all right, so it's probably a minority. So all these devices are essentially archivers. So they all take content from analog sources and they all encode to open MPEG-4, just like our original one did. So they're sort of open DVRs, in a sense, open set-top boxes. So that won't change. That's true of all these. But there's hardware enhancements that are coming down the pike. So lots of interesting stuff going on. One I want to draw your attention to is, again, I think this is really a very important quiet milestone, but we're just announcing this now that with TI we're actually sponsoring some bounties. We've done this. We've worked with Google's Summer of Code program, and we've had applications open for that. We did that last summer and this summer. But we're also getting TI in the game as well as our own. So there's a number of bounties at a number of different levels. So there's ways for hackers to participate and get paid. There's obviously tons and tons of volunteer opportunities as well. But this is one of the big pushes that we've done, that we want to build this open source ecosystem that really builds a platform, makes it easier for everyone to develop for, and we need to sponsor some of that. So this is a way we've experimented previously with putting some money back in the community, and it's worked quite well. And it allows people, students or part-timers, to participate in this and actually get paid for this, as well as build out the whole volumes of IP that are really needed to get these electronics to the state where PCs are. So it's very easy to get in this game and very easy to program into this stuff. Developer, and again, all this stuff should be on that card that you got in the sack. So you'll see all that stuff there, and I've got more cards at the table. But developers, our developer introduction, and a lot of this stuff, again, I mean, be prepared. This is, I can't say this enough, but there's definitely a frontier aspect to a lot of this stuff. You won't see the maturity of documentation in many cases. We're using a lot of mature, well-documented open source software, but in general, these are new things without the size and maturity of community behind them. So expect some rough edges, certainly. Our blog, all the usual you find. For those of you who aren't familiar with Neuros, you'll find the environment very familiar from an open source community kind of perspective. Bugzilla, Subversion, the wiki for documentation, so very familiar stuff. And again, look at bounties, and we've got a list of that's aggregated all the kind of paid contract opportunities that we have, some of which are very simple. You just, there's no application. You just submit code, and the winner gets paid. Some of it, there's actually, application which are more contract-like. So if you want to take on a project for, $5,000 or $10,000, you can put in a little application, and it's mirrored largely after Google's Summer of Code program, but it's not restricted to students or anyone in particular. So look at bounties, and you'll get a complete listing of that. That's a rolling stuff with more and more stuff coming out over time, and obviously our real-time chat. And this is a very interesting slide. But just before I take Q&A, I just want to explain, you should all have your secret Neuros decoder glass, and if you haven't figured this out already, I may have underestimated the audience, but you line up, there's these concentric circles here, and if you line those up with the concentric circle in the Neuros, then it will present to you a 6-card poker hand, and so you discard one card. But in any case, you get a coupon code out of this, so you'll get a hand. If the hand is Full house or better, I believe. You look at the instructions. It's a free OSD, so see me if you got that. And if it's less, then it's a discount of varying levels. So for all these, I think that's at minimum a 10 or 15% discount, and depending on the hand you got it, maybe more. So that's that. I've got more of these if anyone didn't get them at the table. And with that, I got a few minutes for questions before we have to cut over and hand this over. Anyone? Okay.
Do you and Jason's point actually skip through the fields while we pass?
We do sometimes. We actually do. Yeah, that's been quite a bit of fun for us. For those of you who don't, who didn't do that, there's Jason Kreidner, who's in the table next to mine, is a big TI sponsor of a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and a big champion of open source at TI, and so we've gotten quite a bit of grief on Lugs Radio for the relationship between Jason and myself, but the TI sponsorship is very, very important. On a serious note, it's very, very important for what we're doing. Anybody else?
So you're pushing the devices towards a more complex, fancier, more powerful, more capable. You don't seem to be pushing in the other direction.
For making
simpler devices that perhaps buy multiple copies and put it on every single sound system that I have at home.
Well, we're doing both, actually. We actually are in the midst of, we just got an order for an OEM deal. So the products that you'll see coming from this development will be in two forms, one Neuros brand and another in some other brands. So we just are in the process of shipping a product to a European OEM that's a $99 product, that's a 99 euro product, focused specifically on some of the encoding aspects. So it's both. I mean, a lot of what we're doing here is really trying to appeal to our core developer geek crowd with more of the functionality, and then getting simpler and cheaper and easier to use. But a lot of what happens kind of naturally is that, like with our current product, we won't end of life that product, and that gets cheaper and cheaper as we do cost reductions on that. So the standard F unit will continue to get cheaper. We'll keep that in the line and continue to refine that. And we've been making ongoing investments in that since we launched it. So that product will stay. It'll get cheaper. It'll have a place in the product line, and then the new products, we'll continue to launch at the higher ends. And that's our approach to the thing.
I had a scenario in mind, and I was trying to see if the devices would do it. And they'll tell me should I live in a big house? There's people living in the house, community house, and we all have our sound systems, and every so often volume is up, it leads into the hallways, and that's good because we discover each other's music as well. Like something's playing in John's room.
Right.
That's really good. I want to hear it too.
Right.
I want to hear it too.
Sure.
Now, how about I go back to my own room, click on something, and get his stream in my room?
Right.
Or say, hey, everyone, listen up. I'm going to take that stream and send it to the common living room.
Right.
But for that, I need like one small piece of software or hardware. The sound system is not plugged on a computer.
Right.
I need a piece of hardware.
Right.
That all are able to cross-link sources and syncs.
Right. Right. Well, no, it's absolutely doable, and part of the biggest reason most of that stuff doesn't work from the commercial stuff is DRM and the like that makes barriers to interoperability. You'd be amazed at how easy some of the applications like that become if people adhere to open standards and open streams. We've got. I guess we're all set up for. We got probably time for one more question before.
What about open hardware? Are you folks involved in that at all?
Well, it depends what you mean. What do you mean by open hardware? We release schematics and show what's under the hood. Do you mean? What do you mean when you say open hardware?
It's more of a general question. I was just curious how you approach that. It seems like that's sort of evolving.
It's very much evolving. I mean, I'd say yes, we support open hardware. I mean, we sell our hardware, on a module basis. We release schematics for it. So, so I'd say yes. Is the hardware completely open and patent free, and with no proprietary aspects? No, there's a lot of proprietary stuff. So I'd say yes, we support open hardware, but no one really knows what open hardware means yet. Yeah. So there's not a real established rule on there's no GPL for hardware that's really established in general. So I think I better, with just a few minutes, I should allow our next speaker to set up. But anything else? All right.